you went under the wheels.
Perfected.
Welcome to Under the Wheels. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Gabe.
And in today's episode, we are going to do some catching up and try and keep the episode to a decent amount of time, as some of our listeners would like us to. There's only one listener I can think of who would like us to keep it to a decent amount of time. But still.
Do they work from home?
No, they don't. They go in. But
really? That's shocking.
Yeah, they like to listen to the podcast. But his one of his main criticisms was that we should try and keep it shorter, which has never really been our MO. We've always kind of wanted these sprawling episodes that you can kind of jump in and out at any time.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe if we're trying to gain new listeners somehow, keeping it under an hour will help my render times. That's for sure.
Yep.
Funny. So just on that briefly, I'm trying to export and upload more episodes to YouTube. It doesn't look like that recently, but I am. And what I found was, like, when I'm rendering the episode, I can render the episode out really quickly. It doesn't matter how long it takes. But then when it comes to finally encoding it after it hits 100%, one time it took like an hour and a half. And I was just like, what's going on? And then I go to upload it on YouTube. And if it's an episode, like for some of the early episodes, I was doing like fun video animations on it that looped over and over. But it would take like 8 hours to upload to YouTube.
Ooh.
And so I just started going with the image, and now it only takes like an hour. So fun fact about uploading and rendering and things like that.
So you're saying I shouldn't try and upload Lawrence of Arabia to YouTube?
Well, oh god, it depends. You shouldn't try to upload the 4K rip of Lawrence of Arabia in MKV format to YouTube.
I'm just gonna do the Laserdisc.
There you go. Oh my god, can you imagine like finding a way to rip a Laserdisc? It's like the audio quality will be excellent, but the video quality will just be so. That actually wouldn't take that long, because even though it's a long video, because the whole thing is like standard definition, I would expect YouTube to be able to process it, at least like upload it relatively quickly, because it's not going to be a huge file size.
Yeah.
That's the theory anyway. I don't know if that's actually true. Anyway.
You can always test it.
I don't have a copy of Lawrence of Arabia, nor do I have one on Laserdisc. That's where that one kind of starts and stops right there.
Oh, well, you got a point.
So what have you been watching lately, sir?
I've been watching a lot of crap lately. I mean, I saw... there's a Persian movie called Taste of Cherry, which won the Golden Palm back in, like, 1997 that I saw recently.
The Palme d'Or? The Palme d'Or?
Yes. Also, like, so it's like Palme d'Or in French, but I know with Italians I always get confused because it's like there's the D apostrophe. Some people say like D something, whereas other people just say like do whatever. Like Mike Tyson's trainer, Customato. Like I always heard it Customato. It's D apostrophe Amato. Mm-hmm. But then I started people like there's a I think it's a Nevada State Athletic Commission judge named Sal D'Amato, but he's always introduced as Sal D'Amato. So I have no fucking clue.
Oh man, I think at
Italian
that point,
listeners, help me out.
all one of you who may listen to our podcast. Well, there's like Italian, and then there's like Italian American, and I'm not referencing the Martin Scorsese documentary, but like, the how when they come to America that the language morphs. So like, whereas in Italy it might be D'Amato, in America it's like D'Amato, or like how Spanish has changed, where like it's like Ibiza instead of like if you're from Mexico you'd call it Ibiza.
Did you know that the only reason they lisp in Spain is because there was a Spanish king who had a deformed face and jaw and couldn't speak properly? So everyone just started imitating him to make him feel normal, and then it never stopped.
Oh my god. I hope that's true. That sounds like one of those things that like Like, that sounds like a meme thing. Like, did you know? And they have like a picture of like Quasimodo, like dressed as the king, like the king of Spain, blah, blah, blah. Oh my God. Okay. It makes sense. That's crazy.
Well, it's also kind of like how most linguists, they're not 100% sure about this, but they're like fairly sure that, in the like 1700s, people in England and the United States basically talked like how we do right now.
Yeah.
And then the English accent developed from like later on. English aristocracy started like dropping consonants off of stuff and trying to talk different, and then everyone else started imitating them to sound like, well, because everyone wants to sound like they're a rich person,
right?
So they started dropping consonants and things, and then Southern like aristocrats heard it and tried to imitate it, and that's how we got the Southern accent.
That reminds me of I know we've gone way off base here, but like just quickly, the whole Robin Hood Prince of Thieves Kevin Costner accent controversy, where like people are like, Colorado born white boy Kevin Costner goes up and puts his hand down and he's like, I'm gonna show you what English courage is, and everyone's like, but you don't have an English accent. And then after the film's released, Alan Rickman's like, actually, if you look at the history of the English language, you'd find that his accent is actually probably closer to what an actual British accent would have been back in that time. And like,
good old Alan Rickman saving Kevin Costner.
Like, talk about, by the way, like Alan Rickman in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves is like, he knows what movie he's in, and he
kind of makes the movie, doesn't he?
I love that movie. But yeah, he definitely is up there, and like he has this extended death scene in it. Oh, he's great. He's like, God, Alan Rickman's so good in that movie. Everyone kind of hates on that movie now. No one really remembers it, but Alan Rickman and Morgan Freeman are so good in it. But yeah, Alan Rickman has a history, like kind of like how Sean Bean just dies a lot in movies. Alan Rickman has a lot of good death scenes in movies. Rest in peace. Because like Die Hard, and Harry Potter, and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and those other movies that he's in. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Taste of Cherry.
Yes, Taste of Cherry.
It's a tough one to make heads or tails of because it's like a very minimalist, borderline experimental movie. Because it's about a guy who is driving around like the outskirts of Tehran looking for someone to bury him after he kills himself.
Wow.
And the whole movie is just him driving around and these extended conversations where he tries to convince people to help him with this thing. And usually they, don't want to just because they're kind of weirded out by the whole concept.
Yeah, I wonder why they'd be weirded out by the concept.
Yeah. But it's I don't know, it's a very interesting movie. Like I have the Criterion version of it, so it looks absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I mean it's interesting just because it plays out almost entirely in these conversations, and then there's just sort of overlaid with like really wide shots of like the surrounding landscape and just like ordinary life, regular people doing everyday stuff. And I was thinking about it, and it's weirdly like Soul, but like more coherent. Because like whereas Soul doesn't seem to know what it's about, this movie I think knows exactly what it's about, and I think it's about it knows it's about the thing that Soul thinks it might be about, but is sort of skeptical.
Yeah.
Because it's like this guy. It's basically like this guy, because he is preparing to die and is so committed to trying to convince people to assist him in this. He's forced to notice everything about life and about the world that he's taken for granted, or that I think all of us kind of take for granted.
Yeah.
Because the movie is very like quiet and very still, and there's a lot of just like extended moments where you're just sort of allowed to meditate on what's going on in the surrounding environment, and that's shown in the camera frame, and it's it's all very mundane, but it's kind of like that. It's like the seeds falling off the tree, but done better.
I was gonna say, like, there's something that I guess Ozu did really well, but it tends to be lost in American cinema. But there is something that's like incredibly beautiful about the mundane. Mm-hmm. That's like, especially when it's shot in a way that emphasizes how gorgeous it is. That is, I don't know in the case of this movie if it's like a peaceful thing, but like, they have those like supercuts of like relaxing images set to relaxing music where you just like
there's no music in the movie.
Oh, really?
No, there's none. Unless there's like someone's playing the radio.
Right, you're trying. There's no score.
There's no music. There's no score or anything. But yeah, it's like as this guy's driving around, he's having these kind of philosophical conversations with people, trying to like the conversations always follow a similar pattern where he's trying to suss out if they are going to be amenable to what he's about to propose. Mm-hmm. So he's trying to figure out, like, is this person, like, how likely is this person to turn me down, number one. And then number two is kind of like, so he like asks them about themselves and about their life and what they think about the world and things like that. And then he kind of makes his sales pitch. And then, usually they kind of recoil. They're like, what? So then he has to like go into his backup of trying to convince them about like why it's actually a good idea to help him kill himself. But in the process, while a lot of the time while they're having these conversations, you're in the car with them, mm-hmm. locked in like a really extreme close-up, or you're kind of surveying the surrounding landscape as they're driving around and like, just enjoying kind of the natural features and all just the people going about their lives doing whatever. Like, there's construction workers working, building things, and there's, kids playing, and, like a young couple taking like pictures of each other, and, just random stuff like that. That's kind of, it's all things that are really easy to overlook, but the movie like forces you to watch them, like while juxtaposed with this dude talking about like, no, you don't understand. Like, it's really important that I die, and it's really important that you help me do that.
So why does he want to die? Is it ever revealed? Like, nope. The causes? Okay.
I mean, not only is it incredibly minimalist in its style, it's also incredibly minimalist in that it doesn't tell you anything. Like, you never know why he wants to die. You never know anything about the main character other than he wants to die. And you don't really learn much about anyone else either beyond the bounds of these very targeted conversations. It's more just like picking up on their mannerisms and the way they answer questions and stuff. And what's interesting is like, the movie, obviously it won a shitload of awards. It got like a boatload of rave reviews, but Roger Ebert famously hates it. And like, he hates it so much that there was a backlash amongst his peers to him hating it as much as he did, to where like later on he did like the most hated movies of the century or something, and he like doubled and tripled down on hating this movie in particular to like stick it to all his peers who are like, you're an idiot for hating this movie as much as you do. But it's interesting reading his review of it, or like his criticisms, and it's like, I mean, the movie is frustrating to watch, I think, for a lot of Western audiences. Like, I watched it with my girlfriend because mm-hmm. she's Persian, and like, she didn't even need to read the subtitles. I mean, she knows what everyone's saying, and she was actually telling me, the subtitles have changed this part. What they're actually saying is this.
Yeah.
Which was a nice bit of insight to have, where like she could explain the nuances of the language they were using. But like she got really frustrated like kind of early on before sort of settling in later, because it's like it completely flies in the face of any and all filmmaking convention. It's like, take everything that you expect out of any movie and just throw it out the window, because this is going to do everything that's not that. Like, it has basically no plot. It is basically no tension. It doesn't give you any information.
Oh my god, it's a Richard Linklater film, but just in Persian.
More extreme than that.
Oh my god.
Because it's more austere than a Richard Linklater film in a lot of ways. And it's also very, like, self-referential. Like, the director, Abbas Kiarostami, loves to break the fourth wall.
Oh.
So he does that, like, in very off-putting ways, which was also something that I think Ebert really hated.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I have a blurb up here, and it's of the minority of negative reviews. Roger Ebert's Chicago Sun-Times gave it a 1 out of 4. And what purpose does it serve to suggest at first he may be a homosexual? Blah,
which
blah,
the movie
blah.
never does, by the way.
Yeah, like that. I'll comment on that in a second. But like, famously, Roger Ebert also hated The Raid. He was like, I rate my movies based off of how I think fans of the genre will react, and I'm like, dude. You have
no idea
off.
what fans of the genre think about The Raid, then.
Like, if you think that The Raid is a bad movie, you clearly have no idea what fans of action movies actually want to see.
Well, it's like bad movie within the context of the genre especially makes no sense.
Yeah, like, it blows my mind. So, like, the fact that, which is also weird because Roger Ebert, who called it boring or excruciatingly boring, like, he has liked movies that have made no sense or have been extremely strange or boring. So I don't know if it's just like a language barrier thing for him, you know, rest in peace or whatever. But like, yeah, it is kind of funny how you see certain movies where he's like, this is utter complete garbage. And it's like, dude, you're the only person who is seeing it like this. But, you know, I give him respect for doubling down on it and being like, yeah, I'm not going to let the pressure of my peers change my mind. As far as like what Roger Ebert projects onto the movie, I'm guessing in a movie as sort of like stripped down and minimalist as this, it allows for you to kind of project your own readings onto what's preceding, because it gives you so little. Your mind naturally fills in the blanks is what sometimes happens. I'm wondering if that's a case for him on this movie, because his mind was wandering.
Roger Ebert so fills in the blanks with, clearly this guy is gay. Which is like, interesting take. I mean, he could be. I don't know. I have no evidence to...
There's nothing in the movie that may suggest it.
That suggests it, but like, that is, you know, being gay in a repressive country like Iran may make one want to kill themselves. So I
wonder if he just did a quick Google. Well, he did a quick Metacrawler search of like things that are taboo in Iran that someone might want to kill themselves about. Like,
well, what's interesting is like early on, the movie doesn't tell you. You don't know why this guy is driving around approaching people, approaching men specifically. For the first like 30 minutes of it, it's only 30 minutes in that he lays out like why he's trying to pick people up. And there is a part very early on where he approaches kind of this big, strong looking younger guy. And he says like, hey, I have a job for you. And the guy says like, don't talk to me or I'll smash your face in.
Ooh.
Cause I think the implication is he assumes that the main character is cruising.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't like, leave me the fuck alone.
Yeah.
So I could kind of see that, where it's like that one hostile interaction can kind of color the way you see things. But I think within the context of the movie, I think that is just like a misunderstanding. You're not supposed to read anything from it other than it like this guy just misunderstood his intent.
So what would you give it?
It's a witness. I mean, it's really well done. Like I said, it is a bit of a frustrating watch because it spits in Western filmmaking conventions face
Yeah.
so frequently and so thoroughly. But I don't know. It's one of those movies where it's like trying a new food or something. It's like you should see it just to see it.
I was gonna say two questions for you on it. One, did it sort of? So I guess the first one, is it one of those movies that because you were able to get through to the end, and like watch the ending, you were able to appreciate the whole more? And in the sense of, it's kind of hard for me to justify that, but like there are certain movies that
Is it like just? Are you asking, does the ending absolve the rest of the movie?
Yeah, I guess kind of, yeah, because like there are certain movies where it's like it's a pain to sit through, but if you make it to the end, it remains very significant on your mind. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but like I'm wondering if this is one of those kind of movies where it's like if you put in the time and watch it and get all the way to the end, it's all worth it in the end, which is kind of what you say about every movie, but like more so on the ones that are like very unconventional.
No, I mean the ending isn't going to. If you don't like the movie, the ending isn't going to save it for you.
Okay.
In fact, it'll probably actually make it worse if you already don't like the movie. But you should still just see it to see it.
Okay.
It's like I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like even if it's generally not your kind of thing, like if you have the opportunity to go see the Grand Canyon, you should go see the Grand Canyon just because it's like this big significant thing that doesn't really exist anywhere else, and you never know. You just might be awestruck by it.
Okay.
This is kind of one of those things where it's like it's not like any other movie out there, really, and it's good to broaden your horizons, and it is really well done. So even though it's like hard to recommend, as in like, oh, you're gonna love this, it's like you should see it just so you have that experience of seeing it, and you can have an opinion on it, you know?
Yeah. Second question, did it make you want to make a movie?
Kinda. Yeah.
Like we haven't really talked about this too much, but I find that the movies that get me in the filmmaking mood are ones that generally are like really stripped down, really simplified. They're deceptively, like, it seems like it's simple on the surface, but really it's deceptively difficult to make. But like it's almost like their method of making the movie makes you feel, one, it gets you excited about making movies again, and two, the ease at which they accomplish it makes you feel like, yeah, I could do that too. Now, I don't know if the ease, because again, I haven't seen this movie, but like there have definitely been movies that it's low budget or it uses very limited rule set, and by the time I'm done watching it, I'm like, wow, that was great. Wow, that encourages me to make a movie because it's brilliant, but also because it seems like if I could just write better, I could make that movie. You know what I mean?
Well, the interesting thing about Taste of Cherry is it's made under a totalitarian regime, so there's a lot of externally imposed limits on what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, instead of trying to push those limits, Kiarostami like imposes even further limits on himself.
Clearly. And we've talked before about like limits as a filmmaker, and I think we have kind of I think if you have self-imposed limits, it's better than if you have like studio interference as limits. But sometimes having setting limitations ends up helping more than if you just have like complete freedom.
It definitely can.
Yeah. I just think about a lot of filmmakers who do have like no limits on what they do, and a lot of the times it like doesn't turn out as good as they want.
Robert Rodriguez.
Which one?
Robert Rodriguez.
Which movie?
All of him. All of his fucking movies. Every movie that he had money for.
I always think of Hook. Hook is the one movie where I'm always like, Steven Spielberg literally had a blank check from Sony to do whatever he wanted to, and he just had so much power, and it's like, I love it.
Did you see Alita Battle Angel?
I did.
It's horrendous. It's
Oh my
It's
God.
so bad.
It's bad, but it's my kind of trash.
Well, but it's like Robert Rodriguez had all this money to do whatever he wanted. He's not going to put limits on himself, and so he made something like not just bad, but like almost incomprehensibly bad. Like how was this made?
It's like, to me, Alita Battle Angel is the intersection of like Robert Rodriguez and James Cameron are friends. James Cameron's films skew towards this like sort of this area of like it's pretentious blockbuster, and Robert Rodriguez is like Looney Tunes. And like the mixing of the two just doesn't work, because if it was a full tilt Robert Rodriguez movie without like what's his name, Christoph Waltz wielding a giant jetpack infused hammer, I'd be like, okay. But then they're like, and we have to have our Oscar moment. It's like, no, just lean into the ridiculous Looney Tunes, Robert Rodriguez.
Well, I think it was more, at least to me, Robert Rodriguez makes two kinds of movies. He either makes like Once Upon a Time in Mexico and Machete, or he makes Spy Kids. And
Shark Boy and
Lava Girl.
Yep, I know where you're going with it. Yeah.
And for Alita Battle, he really tried to make both.
But with an added bit of like prestige on. Like I know it sounds weird. Well, one, he didn't shoot it himself, so he had to. It was a very studio film. Also, like his visual effects are never like good. They're always efficient in his movies, but they're never good.
Oh, and yeah, like I remember watching Machete Kills,
yeah,
and like all of the digital blood is so poorly done.
So bad. Like I figure for half of the visual effects, he does sort of the previs for them and then sends it out somewhere else. Or like for Machete Kills, he probably put in the digital blood himself because he's like, I do everything myself.
Oh, I'm sure he did because he edited it.
Yeah, but then for like Alita Battle Angel, like, because Rodriguez shoots all of his own movies too. But if you look at like from a technical point of view, the visual effects in Alita Battle Angel are like really, really good, except near the end when the guy has like when the human boy that she loves has like his human head on his like really fake robot body, and he's like walking up the thing. Oh my god, it was so cringy. Okay. I'm going to divert to Alita Battle Angel quickly, okay? Because again, like I said, just quickly, it is my trash. I like it. I think the biggest problem was like the romance story in it that drives it forward is so bad. Yep. Like the main boy character is just so uninteresting. And did you see the original anime of it? The original. I would be interested to see if that works better, because like in the movie itself, it seemed like the first like 4 hours of a Rockstar game, where it's like Alita's constantly going to these checkpoints to find out how to play the game, and then by the time it ends, it's like, okay, cool, now the rest of the world's gonna open up and we're gonna have this. Oh, it's over.
Yep.
So that's the other problem with the movie. But like the visual effects are really good. He brought in a lot of people. It's a very like studio film. It's like I can play by the rules, but but yeah, he's like the Roland Emmerich of that class of indie filmmaker, to put it lightly. Anyway, diversion.
So over. I guess in terms of other shit I've been watching lately, really quickly, First Love by Takashi Miike, really good. It's like, it's not nearly as fucked up as most of his movies, and it's actually like, it's just like a fun like action comedy. Like it's basically Baby Driver but way better.
Interesting.
So definitely worth checking that out. But what I really want to talk about is James Wan's visionary director, James Wan, new movie Malignant. Because Jesus fucking Christ.
Did you see it in theaters?
No.
Okay.
God, no. I'm not an idiot. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Like, it's really bad, actually. And bad in, like, some of the most bizarre ways I can think of. So have you seen it?
I haven't, no. After you sent that note, I was just like, All right, that's a movie I don't need to watch now. I know that's terrible.
No, but you don't understand. Like it's not bad as in like, you know, like Roger Ebert thinking Taste of Cherry is bad because it was frustrating. It's bad like The Room is bad. It's hilarious. It's comedy gold. Like it's so funny. I'm not sure if it's actually it might actually be a comedy.
Like what? Like so what do you think went right or wrong in it then? Like so, because like have you seen the impression I got when you sent me a message, because you said like, are all of his horror films like this incompetent? Something along those lines.
Are all of his films this bad?
This
Are
bad,
all of his horror
yeah.
movies this bad?
But like, oh my god, I can't think of any of them. Everyone loves The Conjuring. I think it's a little bit too religious propagandist for its own good, but that's I guess a story for a different day. And then the other one was the other main one where he like got a lot of acclaim was that Patrick Wilson movie that I can't think of the name
Insidious?
of it. Insidious, yes. So like the first Insidious is like it's really solid because it's kind of like I guess it depends on how much you like The Exorcist and like the slow build of the horror, but like it tried to focus on like creepy imagery and slow, deliberate like push-ins and letting the moment build, as opposed to just like, here's a jump scare, here's another jump scare. You know, the thing that Aquaman gets accused of doing all the time. Here's another jump scare. Like, it was a mix of decent amounts of jump scares and slow building moments. Like, I don't think there's like a horror moment for the first like 30 minutes, but but like the way that everything builds in the movie makes it seem a lot scarier.
The thing with Malignant is there's, I think, 2 horror moments in the first maybe 30 minutes or so, and then there's none for the rest of the movie. It's like, you know those Italian horror movies I used to watch from like the 70s? Like Deep Red and Suspiria and Tenebrae and stuff. Like, this feels like a homage or maybe a parody of those, because it appropriates a lot of the same conventions and has a very similar, or at least a superficially similar tone. So it's like, you know, like you've got the black gloved killer who stabs people to death in very like through these very like ornate, complicated setups. You've got like you got like mental illness being a big theme. You have dual identities and especially gender confusion being a big theme. You've got like really stylized lighting. You have like really visually striking art direction. You have this weird tone where the horror, like the kills and stuff, instead of being done in like a horror movie way where they're very like slow and sudden, they're done in like a Italian giallo way where they're very protracted. Like they're these very long sequences that are very complicated. They're very intense with a lot of very like flamboyant camera work, loud like pulsating music. There is kind of like this heightened sort of acting throughout the whole thing. And then like it also kind of feels like a shitty B movie in a lot of ways, because there's like a kind of a science fiction element to it. And people say really ridiculous shit or really obvious shit with like 110% seriousness. like the main villain is like, he's the black gloved serial stabber man. But you know, he can like somehow control electrical devices and communicates through electricity. So like he'll take over a radio and talk through the radio, and they have radios all over in like 2020 Seattle, but whatever.
Right, they
or
have
like
to
people's
eliminate
phones,
cell phones,
you know. but like like there's this part where he, like in his origin story, it's very like the opening scene is like a little origin sneak peek of the villain, where it's like this dark, creepy hospital on a cliff overlooking the ocean in the most like hilariously cliched way possible. And like it's like this B-movie schlock where like people are getting ripped apart by an unseen monster, and then the doctors go into this room, and he starts communicating to them through the radio, and the first doctor's like, it's like he's communicating to us through the radio, and then the second doctor is like he's broadcasting his thoughts. Like, and I delivered those lines exactly how the actors deliver those lines. Like, it's like best to the worst level stuff, And it's like, I don't, like, because it's so bizarre, because all of it is so stupid. Like, people say ridiculous shit like, he's broadcasting his thoughts. Like, they're fucking anime characters.
Oh, my God.
But then, like, James Wan is this really slick, like, technician as a filmmaker.
Right.
Like if I was to describe him in one word, it would be technical. Like he's very, very technical as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
He has a very strong control over what he's doing, and everything he does is extremely polished because it feels very deliberate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But like these very sharp, deliberate, stylish, polished camera moves and edits make absolutely no sense with the complete like batshit camp tone and content of the rest of the movie. It's so weird, and it's like, I mean, everything is so gratuitous to where it borders on parody. Like there's the house that the main character lives in. It looks like a normal, boring house during the day, but then every shot of it at night, it's like there's so much fog you can't see anything else. Like she lives in a neighborhood with other houses. You can't see anything else besides the house, and it's like backlit, and like it looks extra like decrepit and horrifying, and it's like it's just laughable because it's so over the top. Or like all the kills and all the violence. There's just this insane excess of digital blood and brutality to where, like, again, it becomes, like, almost Looney Tunesy and cartoonish. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel, like, scary or horrifying. It's just like, what the fuck? Just, like, buckets of blood. And, again, it's done in this very, like, loud, in-your-face, like, sort of way. Kind of how, like, those Giallo movies did, where when characters got killed off, it was also like in this really aggressive, in-your-face way with like, camera placement and editing that really emphasizes the violence in almost like a borderline fetishistic fashion. Like it's really indulgent. And again, it's got like this like super loud, fast-paced, blistering music. Mm-hmm. Same idea, but even more extreme almost, because you have one, James Wan is, like I said, a very polished technician, whereas, Dario Argento and like Mario Bava and some of these other guys were more rough around the edges.
Right. And so the juxtaposition of like really polished and like extremely gratuitous violence is just like they clash as opposed to marry together well.
Yeah, and also partly it also doesn't help that a lot of the effects are digital.
Right.
So it's like the blood's digital. There's just like buckets of digital blood flying all over the place. Like the walls are being painted with it. So yeah, it's just so weird. And then like the acting is really campy. The plot is absolutely nonsensical. Like the twist of like who is the killer, I guessed it probably 30 minutes in. Not because it's obvious necessarily, but because it's like, boy, it sure would be stupid if this was the twist. And then it was the twist. It's like, oh, well, it was stupid then. Yeah.
Yep.
There's also like a bunch of bizarre, like out of place cliches and things. Like like not only is all the acting like really campy and terrible, but there's like two black people in the whole movie. One of them is so like there's this. Okay, let me set this up.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a woman who has visions of murders happening while also being stalked by this creepy like character, and the visions of the murders are actually real. Like she's witnessing them happen. And then there's a pair of cops investigating the murders, and the main woman has a younger sister who's kind of like her emotional support. But like, so the two cops, you know, the main cop is a dude. His partner is like the textbook archetype, no nonsense black female cop who is just constantly like over this shit at all times. like basically every line she says is just "I'm too old for this shit" kind of stuff. Like, but like poorly, like delivered poorly,
right,
without any kind of artfulness to it. And then the only other black character in the movie is a fucking like there's a scene later where the main lady is implicated in the murders, so she gets held in a jail cell. And she's in a jail cell with like all these like comically gross like women. And the only other black person is like a fucking disco dancer from the 70s. Like it's a black woman with a giant afro in like dressed like she's one of the fucking Bee Gees. And it's like no one dresses like that now. Like what the fuck is going on?
I have a couple of questions for you, but I should also state that I'm looking at the Wikipedia page, and apparently the movie, because like I said, Insidious was inspired by The Exorcist.
Mm-hmm.
This was, in fact, inspired by Giallo movies.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay.
So
that's interesting, then.
So part of the campiness, which then leads me to, do you recommend? Do you recommend watching it?
I don't know. I mean, I might recommend getting drunk and watching it because
you sound so torn about it. Because it's like you sound just very torn about it.
Like it's so insane, man. Like there's a 10-minute raid style ninja fight like near the end of the movie that just comes out of nowhere too.
Man, he's getting too much power, that James Wan. Put anything he wants in movies now.
He could literally do whatever he wants. I mean, this is like, I mean, like it's like Aquaman. So Aquaman is the only other James Wan movie I've seen.
That's. Did you ever see the original Saw? I never saw it.
No. Like I said, it is the only other James Wan movie I've seen. I've never seen any of the ones written by Lee Winnell. I've never seen his other horror movies. I've seen Aquaman and Malignant, and boy, do they leave a certain impression. Because Aquaman is also campy as hell. It's also stupid as hell, but like I could see it. I can envision a better version of that movie where there's a lot of kind of studio
we talked
like
about this.
Studio filmmaking 101 techniques in Aquaman that feel really out of place. Like you could have a campy, fun, silly, dumb superhero movie without those, and it would actually probably be better because a lot of the studio mandated aspects of it just come off as annoying and unnecessarily spoon-feedy and hand-holding. That said, Malignant is also campy, dumb, and terrible. There's a lot of cliches and spoon-feedy, hand-holding bullshit, but that all feels very like James Wan really wanted it in there. Like, because I lost track of how many times something would happen in a scene and then someone would like exclaim in shock exactly what we just saw happen. Like this is not an actual example from the movie, but
Right.
just for the sake of argument, someone gets their face ripped off.
Mm-hmm.
We get a whip zoom onto someone. They're like, oh shit, he just got his face ripped off. Like, that happens so frequently in Malignant, where it's like something happens and then another person aghast is like, oh my god, that thing we just saw happened. He's broadcasting his thoughts.
Right. My favorite version of that is because like you saying that, there's that moment in The Dark Knight where they're driving the giant police truck to transport Harvey Dent to the lockup, and like the person who's next to Gordon won't shut the fuck up, and they keep cutting back to him, and it's like, hey, look, this thing happened. Oh, that's not good. We know, we're watching it. Something else that's even worse happens. Oh, that is not good. Like, we get it, you fucking idiot. Shut the fuck up. Stop cutting back to it. So yes,
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about with the sort of like the obvious exposure dialogue type. Like, we need to make sure that the audience really knows. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I guess I'll just. Do you mind if I spoil the movie? Because I kind of have to at this point.
You just want to, dude. Do it. That's fine.
Okay.
I'm fine with it. It will not affect my view unless it's like a mind blowing, like if it's like a Fight Club style mind blow, then maybe not. But I don't care. Go ahead and spoil
Well,
it. It's
I mean, it
Malignant.
kind of is, but again, like I said, if you've seen enough Giallo movies, it's
You know it's
really
coming.
obvious.
Okay.
So the killer. So they throughout the whole movie, they keep making references to cancer and like surgery, and so I guessed like, okay, the killer must be like a tumor parasitic twin type of situation that was living on our main character and that was either removed and is walking around freely, or that wasn't fully removed and is like possessing her. So it turns out she has a parasitic twin from her past that's like this demonic creature. Most of it was surgically removed, but because they share a brain, it couldn't be fully removed. So what was left was just sort of pushed into the back of her skull. And then at night, he tears the back of her head open, and his like creepy demon face emerges from the back of her head and possesses her body, walking backwards to commit these murders and do crazy shit.
What?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm with. This is Annabelle Wallace, right? The main character.
Yes, Annabelle Wallace, who is not the doll from The Conjuring.
Okay, go on.
So yeah, that's the twist, and it is as dumb as it sounds, but like that kind of thing, insane asylum. It's like that happens a lot in Giallo movies where it's like some character was like, you find out later that they were an asylum patient, and then then later after that they have like a split personality. It's like, oh, they were like, this guy was the killer all along. Oh wow, that would have been crazier if all of these movies didn't have that exact same twist.
Someone has seen Psycho.
Yeah. Pretty much, because like I feel like that's the twist in Tenebrae and Deep Red, where it's like the killer is just the main character with like a split personality, or it's like some otherwise innocent seeming character who has a split personality. Yeah, so that accounts for at least two of the most famous Giallo movies ever, if not more. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. I've never seen Bird with the Crystal Plumage, but I'm certain, like, I would give it like 60% odds that that's also the twist there. But yeah, it's it's so stupid. But like, when he takes control of her body, he has like fucking ninja powers and can like do crazy acrobatics, and he's got super strength, and he has like, it's like, did you see Upgrade?
No, I still haven't seen it.
Well, because like Leigh Whannell and James Wan are creative partners, and Leigh Whannell did Upgrade, and like a lot of the fight scenes are reminiscent of Upgrade, and Upgrade, while very science fiction heavy, I think technically draws a lot from The Raid. So a lot of the fight scenes are like that, and there's this crazy like raid / upgrade style ninja fight near the end of the movie that just goes on forever and ever, and like,
I mean, is it cool?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Like, it's neat. It has no place in the movie.
But
it's neat.
Remove it from the context of the film, and it's like it's worth watching. But in the movie, you're just like, we're spinning plates now.
Oh yeah, and it's like it's crazy too, because like in the beginning of the movie we have no idea who the killer is. We just know he's like some dude named Gabriel, oddly enough. And then like halfway through, the main character like figures out it's him, and she's like, oh, it's someone from my past. But then everyone's like, oh, that was just your imaginary friend when you were a kid. And then she goes to like a hypnotist to like tease out memories from her very early childhood. Which she has like amnesia over. And like, you know, she has some traumatic thing where she's like, you know, talking about how Gabriel was like inside her brain and telling her to kill people. And then like she has this freak out, and then the camera just like whips over and zooms in on the black woman cop, and she's just like she is like this like incredulous Wanda Sykes-esque reaction of like, you're saying the killer is your imaginary friend? And it's like, dude, come on, like, don't put that in the movie. Like, please, we don't need that. This is the 21st century.
Dude, you want to know how much the budget of this movie was?
How much?
$40 million.
Yeah, you know what? I bet they spent $38 million of that on fucking fog.
It's just like, can you imagine getting $40 million to make your homage movie? Like,
yeah.
That's how
but
much.
That's the thing. Like, I don't know if it's an homage. I don't know if it's tongue in cheek. Like, because it's so bad, it feels like it has to be tongue in cheek.
It probably is. It probably is tongue in cheek. Yeah.
Because like when she freaks out about how her imaginary friend told her to kill people, and then whips to the cop, and she's like, "You're saying the killer is your imaginary friend?" In like, you know, this really heightened way, with the camera like flying into her face for emphasis. Mm-hmm. Like, that's reminiscent of a lot of the shit I hated about Aquaman. I'm sorry, like, this movie's kind of broken my brain. I'm starting to forget where I'm losing the ability to construct a point.
So I'm gonna take this then, because I have a question I've been meaning to ask you for like a good 15 minutes, and it hasn't left my mind, because like the more you talk about the movie, the more it reinforces this question for me to ask you.
Oh yeah, wait. I guess
the
point I was trying to make, it's like, in Aquaman, I know the studio probably mandated it. In this, I know it was Wan's choice, but it's like, why did he have that in there? Did he want us to laugh? Is he like making fun of the fact that a lot of movies do this, or does he just genuinely think like it's a good idea to have this in here? I don't know.
That's what leads me to my question. So, a lot of filmmakers that we like, as they become more commercial, like Ridley Scott, for example, his first couple movies were so him, and as we've gone, his movies have become less him and more commercial fare. But how much of that is the studio interference, and how much of that is he knows that this is what is expected of him to do for the studio? And what that makes me think of is like James Wan, originally an independent voice, started with Saw. You know, Insidious actually, I feel like if you watched Insidious, you'd probably notice more often than not that they would have these sort of like audience asking the questions, but in the form of a character asking the question, right? Or like audience reaction, but put into the film.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in Malignant.
And so like because filmmakers, as they get more commercial, sometimes their works start to suffer. There's very few who don't. But like as Brian De Palma became more commercial, his work started to get worse and worse. I wonder if we know that James Wan is putting this in, but I wonder if he's putting it in because he knows that this is something that the studio is going to say, or it's something that he has now become just comfortable doing. And so those moments in Aquaman that you thought were studio mandates, I wonder if it was actually him after doing like Fast 7 or Furious 7. Now he's like, oh, this is what needs to be in a commercial film. When really it's not, but in his mind, he thinks that.
I don't know, because it's...
Like, it's baffling, right?
So
like,
it is so baffling, because see, here's the thing with this specific technique we're talking about, which is putting a emotional, like having someone in the movie react to what's happening the way you want the audience to react as a cue to guide the audience's reaction.
Right.
And to frame the audience's thinking about the movie. The classic example being every anime ever. when a character does like some weird superpower thing, it cuts to because like there's always two characters fighting, and then there's like all of their friends watching them fight and commentating on it. So like some character does like a superpower move, and then a character on the sidelines is like, oh, he's doing the secret such and such technique. And then everyone's like, oh, wow. And that's the cue for you, the audience, to go, oh, wow, he's using the secret such and such technique. That's pretty cool. Because the characters in the show reacted that way, telling you to react that way. You see that a lot in movies. You see that a lot in Malignant. That said, yes, it is kind of a standard component of big budget blockbuster filmmaking. Almost every blockbuster is going to have that in there to some degree. But there is, I think, an artful way to do it. Credit to Christopher Nolan, I think, because his movies oftentimes require that kind of hand-holding because they wouldn't make sense otherwise.
Right.
But he's able to incorporate it in a way that it doesn't stick out. It feels very natural and can even be self-referential in a way that doesn't draw attention to itself, but actually further makes it like even more subtle. Inception being a good example. There's a lot of moments where characters react to something amazing as to kind of cue the audience on how to think about it.
Yeah.
But the way they do it feels very like in universe, in keeping with their character, and it kind of just flies under the radar. And I would imagine that James Wan, at least given the reputation that he has and given some of the filmmaking skill on display in Malignant, would also be capable of that. So again, like, I don't know if he just fucked up here or if it's a conscious choice. Like, I want to make these cues as obvious and ridiculous as possible.
Yeah, I would say that it's probably like, because even Christopher Nolan now has bad habits that he's picked up from making these like huge budget movies. So I would say it's like a bad habit he's picked up. I guess that was the big long and short of it. Like, do you think it's a bad habit? I think at this point it's a bad habit that he's picked up because like there's certain things that, like his camera moves are even more polished now. It's like, oh, that's good. But then on the flip side, it's like his ability to explain information to the audience in an efficient and creative way probably isn't there, because that's something that if you have more freedom in your previous projects, you can explore it to a better degree. And as you get more commercial, you have to find, the first thing that you're going to do is like, okay, well, what's the easiest way to do it? We'll do it that way. And we're not going to do another pass. Also, interestingly, like the script, I would be interested for you to watch. I would say Insidious is probably the sort of middle ground of like, he doesn't have a budget to do anything and you can tell, but he's still really creative. Whereas The Conjuring is probably the most, I feel like a lot of people became fans of James Wan due to The Conjuring. So
Yeah.
that's probably the intersection of polish and creativity. I think Insidious 1 is a little bit more creative, but it's a lot rougher. So you might want to see one of those two movies and see if it gels. Because I do think that, like, if you go back to the well enough, like, a lot of people hated Insidious Part 2. And if you go back to the well enough, even if you increase your skill set, there's other things that diminish. And usually the thing that diminishes is like your creativity or your spunk or your ability to, like, parse out what's really stupid. Or in this case, it sounds like Malignant, it doesn't lean one way or the other enough in that sort of, like, homage territory to be enjoyable. It has an identity crisis. Is it supposed to be super serious? Is it supposed to be homage-y? So that's what it sounds like to me.
I don't know.
From what you said.
It's just, it's hard to make heads or tails of, because I don't know if it's an homage gone wrong or if it's homage by way of parody.
Yeah, and then but the fact that you have to question it is, like, a failure in its own right. You know what I mean? Like, I always think about that when I think of movies that are like, this is homaging this. I'm like, yeah, but if I have to question that at any point while I'm watching it, then it's clearly not working really well. So,
well, it's like, I think it's clearly an homage. Like, I think James Wan definitely has an affection for the kind of movies that inspired Malignant.
yeah.
I just don't know if he's, like, paying tribute sincerely or if he's paying tribute by roasting them.
Right. That's also a hard line to travel too, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. And you can also get stuck in this territory where you're such a fan of them and you want to embrace it, but you also want to make fun of it, and knowing where the line is to cross is incredibly hard. And if you're trying to do both, you're going to fail at both. Is kind of like, cuz I can't think of a single movie where it's like it's trying to make fun of but also homage it. It's like anytime I think of movies like that, it either goes in one direction and it just ends up becoming too much of a parody of where it's embracing it, or it doesn't go enough in one direction and it just kind of is DOA.
Yeah.
So,
well, the other thing one other aspect of the movie that is just absolutely nuts is the fucking music. Because like the musical cues are so loud and so obvious. And they even have like a dark electronic bummer version of Where's My Mind by the Pixies.
Yeah, that's something that's always,
like,
in James Wan's movies.
That wasn't ham-fisted enough. So the music is, like, really just intense.
Bash you over the head.
And, like, it bashes you over the head. I mean, the music in those Giallo movies also kind of bashes you over the head, but it's more, I guess, it's more artful in a way, because it's not, the music itself is often like 1970s progressive rock music, so it's like very strange. Like it's very, like, you know, King Crimson-y sounding, if you can imagine, like, Italian King Crimson or something.
Sure.
Whereas, like,
that's my response.
Whereas, like, you know, this is like the music in this is it's got all the subtlety of, like, a Big Mac, like.
Again, I think there's a place for that, but I can see it being not working.
Yeah, man. Malignant, it's like I don't know. It's like a get together with your friends, have a few drinks kind of movie.
Yeah.
I think.
I don't think that's a bad thing either. I think,
no,
like, that's, you know, there's a space for movies like that. I'm happy that this got a release. It's like, it's not a movie you're supposed to take super seriously. It sounds like.
It sounds like, I don't know. I mean, it's not good, but it is hilarious. It's hilariously not good.
It's not good it's more not good in the right way than it is in the wrong way.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Like it's bad in all of the right ways.
That's amazing. It sounds like something I shouldn't watch just, like, on my own, but maybe we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, you should watch it with your wife and some friends. I think it would be fun.
Nah, I can't. She wouldn't like it. She doesn't like horror films.
It's not a horror movie. It's a stupid movie. The weird thing too is there's like 2 horror-ish sequences towards the beginning, and they're pretty well done. Like they're very like competent. They're set up well. They are like genuinely tense. And then they just like that's it. It doesn't do it ever again.
Those are the 2 scenes they ran out of budget for. So they're like, all right, guys, we got to do it creatively. The rest of the movie, they were fine, but they had to reshoot these 2 scenes. Like, oh, okay, go back to Insidious. How are we going to do this? All right, that's interesting. That's interesting enough. No, I didn't realize you felt this strongly about Malignant.
Oh, yeah. I was kind of hoping you'd seen it so we could really go in depth on it.
Yeah, I should have just said, like, do you want me to watch Malignant so I can like dialogue with you? But I figured it's been a while since we did a catch-up episode. So,
what have you been watching lately?
So 2 things of note. I beat No More Heroes 3, which actually has a lot of Takeshi Miike references. So that's really the only reason I'm mentioning it here. To the point where, are you going to play it?
No.
To the point where Takeshi Miike actually appears in the game.
Oh, wow. That's cool. It's like how Hideo Kojima shows up in Too Old to Die Young, and then Nicholas Winding Refn shows up in Death Stranding.
Which I also started like kind of inching towards replaying Death Stranding since the director's cut came out. But yeah, like if you like post-modern bullshit that doesn't make any sense, then the No More Heroes series is like so for you. For all of my No More Heroes fans out there, which is like maybe one other person who might be interested in this podcast in the entire world.
Yeah. Well, you tend to have an affection for a lot of these like kind of cult Japanese games, like No More Heroes, the Yakuza series.
Yeah.
Like I don't know anyone who actually plays the Yakuza games, but I know like I've seen plenty of memes come out of the Yakuza games.
Yeah, I mean, for No More Heroes, it's fun in spite of some of the design choices. Like Grasshopper Studio, who does No More Heroes, Killer is Dead, Killer 7, Lollipop Chainsaw, which James Gunn wrote.
Suda 51 stuff.
Suda 51, yep. His like the games that he directs have really solid gameplay, even if it's stripped down and simplified. Like for No More Heroes, the reason I liked it so much was because it was one of the few games that really took advantage of the Wii remote. Like the whole gameplay was designed around that thing, to the point where like important dialogue comes out of the speaker of the Wii remote.
Wow.
Yeah, like it was, and that's what he's like Hideo Kojima. If Hideo Kojima weren't trying to be serious all the time.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing I've really admired about a lot of Japanese game studios and game developers is that a lot of the big Japanese games that come out and get released in the US, the gameplay is always just like immaculate. It's so polished.
Sometimes to the expense of other things. Like No More Heroes 3 has really bad frame rate in the areas where you don't need to worry about frame rate. Which is fine, because in the areas where you're fighting people, it runs at 60 frames a second. Okay, so it's like, okay, where it needs... But that's the other thing about Grasshopper games is like, they have to selectively choose where to put the money in to make the best product. And at least in No More Heroes 3's case, they put it into the combat. And it's fun enough. It'll get you through to the end. And the last series of boss fights, like everyone's been saying this, but like the last 3 or 4 boss fights in the game are really amazing. Like they're really well done.
That's cool.
Which is not the case with No More Heroes 2, but is the case with No More Heroes 1. No More Heroes 1 is a great game, and if you have a Wii, it's totally worth playing on the Wii. Just make sure you put the sound all the way up. But yeah, it's weird and it's hard to recommend. Like, I feel like if I recommended it to you, a lot of the sort of like the fourth wall breaky moments, which I think work better in video games than they do in like film a lot of the time. But I think a lot of the fourth wall breaky stuff, a lot of the things where like the gameplay loop, it could really get on your nerves. So you have to really be like, you will really know if you like it within the first 4 ranked battles, which is,
Okay.
that's, 60, that's like 40% of the game. But still, No More Heroes 3 is probably the most accessible. So if you're interested, you can do that, but there's a lot of backstory to it. So gameplay wise, it's probably easy to access, but story wise, you're going to be like, what the fuck? Who is Henry Cooldown, which is an awesome name. Henry Cooldown. I don't know why that stuck with me. But yeah, it's No More Heroes 3. It's really good. They talk a lot about Takeshi Miike in it. It made me really interested. That's why when you brought up the Miike movie, I was like, ooh, maybe I should ask him about it. And then like, I need to talk about Malignant. Okay, that's fine. And then have you seen, I'll go through this one quickly, but I think it'll be able to engage you more. Have you seen Dr. Zhivago?
No. I mean, I've seen maybe 10 minutes of it.
Okay. I did watch it. All 3 hours plus intermission of it.
Oof.
Yeah, it was. I was hoping it would be. It was okay. Maybe because I watched it in broken up segments, it detracted from it a little bit. But like, I don't know what I was expecting. The camera work is really good. Do you know what the movie's about?
It's like some sort of romance about sad Russian people and the Russian Revolution, and Alec Guinness doesn't have any facial hair.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Omar Sharif has like, his eyes are like so yellow throughout the whole movie, and they keep having these close-ups of him, and I'm like, dude, you're super jaundiced right now. But I think they wrote it into the script that he's like, he's part, this is gonna sound terrible, he's part Middle Eastern, part Russian, because
well, that's
like
a thing.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's in the movie, because originally they were gonna try and get Peter O'Toole to play the role, so I don't know if
They
gonna
probably
just,
made it up for the movie.
Yeah, I'm thinking they made it up just for Omar Sharif. Which, of course, if you come off of Lawrence of Arabia, where he's like this like warrior badass general military commander, and then in this he's kind of like a very soft-spoken like medical doctor in the military with a heart of gold. He is a poet, and it's just like, whoa, that's not what I was expecting. I thought I was going to see more badass Omar Sharif. But Alec Guinness, man, like, I need to go back and watch other movies he's in, because Alec Guinness is freaking incredible as an actor. I know that we kind of make fun of it in Lawrence of Arabia because he's wearing brown face, and he's not in it that much. And he's in Dr. Zhivago even less. But the scenes he's in, he completely steals the movie. It's great watching him. So, not as good as Lawrence of Arabia. Kind of boring. I know a lot of people say Lawrence of Arabia is kind of boring.
They're lying.
They have no idea what they're in for. Lawrence of Arabia is brilliant. But it is weird. David Lean, after directing Lawrence of Arabia, wants to direct a smaller movie. Directs Dr. Zhivago, which is 3 hours long. And, I mean, I feel like it's worth seeing. Like, I think its status as a classic movie has kind of eclipsed any sort of rating I would give it, because like I thought it was fine, but if you're a fan of Lean, you have to see it, right?
Yeah.
So there's definitely elements that are really cool. This one character, he's like, a peaceful communist, and then he dies, but he's not actually dead. He comes back at the end of Act 1, and he's this like ruthless badass from the military. And I was like, that's a way you can introduce your villain, only in like a 3-hour movie that has an intermission. And I was like that stuck with me. So like a lot of the plot stuff didn't stick with me, but that stuck with me. Like revealing your new villain. I know I've taken over the whole runtime discussion of this.
No, that's fine. I mean, it's interesting because I think you can, with a 3-hour movie, you have that ability to let things play out over a longer time. Where it's like, yeah, you can kind of like plant the seed of something that won't pay off until way later, or like, yeah, have a character die and then come back like they would in a TV show or something.
Yeah. Or in a Bollywood film.
Or just any soap opera. Which is what Bollywood films are, really.
Yeah.
Like condensed soap operas.
Yeah, with better cinematography.
And with fucking musical numbers.
Yeah, it is interesting, and like I think the use of the intermission is like very severely underrated. We've talked about it a little bit with like Kingdom of Heaven and how, or even in Lawrence of Arabia, how like the start of the second half of a movie feels like they'll either move to a new point of view character or they'll move forward in time to a point. And in those two movies specifically, they always start the second act from someone else's point of view. Like Kingdom of Heaven, like it doesn't start with Balian's point of view, and then in Lawrence of Arabia, it starts with like the two British diplomats or British dudes talking about stuff.
Since I haven't seen it, do you think there's a logical place for an intermission in Avengers Endgame?
Possibly. I would have to rewatch it, but possibly. I think one of the main issues is like the intermission you want to have come later in the movie. So you want the movie to kind of be 2/3 over by the time you have an intermission. Is kind of like my feel for it, because you want the second half of the film to move faster. Because they've already been sitting for like an hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes. So the only place I could think of is like right before they go back in time, because Endgame is like broken into like 5 different movies, like 5 different mini plots that make up a large plot.
Okay.
Where does that question come from? I'm interested now.
Well, one of the reasons I never saw Endgame is because it didn't have an intermission.
In theaters, yeah.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to sit in one place for 3 hours. Especially for a Marvel movie. So it's like, if they had like just a 10-minute intermission, that probably would have gone a long way towards getting me to actually go out and buy a ticket. But they didn't. Yeah. So it's like, nah, I'll pass. Also, just because I liked the ending of Infinity War.
You're just like, to me, the Marvel movies ended when Thanos said snap.
Yeah, that's a good way to like conclude the franchise. But yeah, it's like going. So yeah, I just didn't. Them not having an intermission for a 3-hour movie, especially, a movie that's generally targeted towards like families with children. Like I can't think of a kid where you can, you go to the movies and buy them a slushie and they don't have to go to the bathroom like after an hour and a half. So it's like it's tough to get a kid to sit through all that, and then for like the parents have to like if let's say the parents are huge Marvel nerds and don't want to miss a second of Avengers Endgame, they're gonna be like oh crap, I gotta take Junior to the bathroom right now.
Yeah.
So it's like, I feel like they would be throwing everyone a bone if they just put like a little intermission in there. Yeah. But they didn't. So I was wondering, like, maybe one of the reasons they didn't is that like there just wasn't a good place for one, which is why I asked.
Yeah. I want to start wrapping up, but I want to say this about Avengers Endgame specifically, which I feel like we talk about a fair. It like enters the conversation a fair amount. They were trying. Disney really didn't want it to be 3 hours. They were trying everything they could to get it cut down from 3 hours.
Yeah.
So, and it's just at this point in time, like you would think with all of the power of Avengers and all of the momentum that they've built towards it, that they could take more risks like that. Let's make it 3 hours. Or even like 3 hours and 15 minutes. Let's put an intermission in there. And the fact that like Disney and the other bean counters were so concerned that it would affect the box office, like is kind of depressing, right? Because like, you're right. It would have been better if they had a 15-minute intermission. And then people could be like, okay, this is the end spot. Let's go out. Let's rush the bathroom. Let's rush the concession stands again, and let's come back. But it's just seen as so, I guess, old-fashioned or like, or just so dated.
Yeah, I don't know. I think part of it is the, one, they want to get more showings in, right?
Of course, right.
I think it's also like movies don't have intermissions anymore, so you don't want to put people off by having
at least not in
too
America,
strange and new.
Yeah.
I also think it's like a failure on Disney's part to recognize like the power of their brand, which is weird because they're like team brand power. Like that's all they do is branding.
I feel like they've been doing that a lot lately, though. Their failure to recognize the proper brand appeal. Yeah,
because it's like Marvel is gonna do what it's gonna do, no matter what, because the brand is so strong. Yeah. And I also think we talk about Endgame more than we maybe should, just because it is a unique movie for our time. It's like it's the only blockbuster that's that long. It's a weird phenomenon because it has like 10 years of history built into it. So it's like the amount of setup to get to there is just ridiculous. And it's kind of capitalizing on a decade of work to build a brand and a fan base around that. Yeah. Which again is like super unique.
It's also weird. Like, this is something else I was thinking about because, Dr. Zhivago and Lawrence of Arabia and Kingdom of Heaven, like, those all feel epic and romantic in scope for a 3-hour movie. Even like The Sound of Music has this like epic scope, beautiful cinematography, Ben-Hur, this epic story that takes have you ever seen Ben-Hur? The original?
No, but I know it's like this big, long, epic movie that takes place over like decades, and it's like really complicated and like any good old-fashioned epic movie.
The end of Ben-Hur, I was just like, end it, please, just end it. I'm no longer interested, which is weird because I love long movies, but it feels like there was a really weird pacing thing in there that I'd be interested if you ever watch it to talk to you about it, because I wonder if we'd be coming at it from similar angles. But like with Avengers End Game, it's like Infinity War felt like the epic storyline because you have all of these people gearing up for this huge threat in the form of Thanos, who's unbeatable. And then in Endgame, it's like a good third of the movie is them going backwards in time. And it just feels weird and leads to this big epic battle. But the epic battle is against a foe who's not nearly as strong as he was in the previous movie. And the setting that they're in is not particularly interesting to look at, which is good for the characters because you're then focusing on the characters. But the battle itself, you want it to be like this grand scale, like, or have some sort of like visual interests to hold you, which is
but that's always been the Marvel MO for the most part, is they care about the characters more than about anything else. They want people to like the characters, to want to see the characters. They don't care about the actors who play them.
Right.
They don't care as much about the stories.
They definitely don't care about the actors. You're right.
And they don't care about the cinematic aspect of it, because it's like, how many times have we seen the heroes fight in like a gray bunker or a parking lot or like just kind of a gray city street? I mean, I think they intentionally make everything very plain and bland and dull so that you're focused on what the characters are doing. I think the only movies I can think of that had really visually interesting settings and cool art direction really are the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. And even like Guardians of the Galaxy 1 has a lot of like boring gray city streets in it. Yeah. And like Doctor Strange, which is they just take boring gray city streets and try to like Inceptionify them. Yeah. And that's kind of it. I'm trying to think of anything else.
Thor Ragnarok.
Thor Ragnarok is visually interesting. Yeah. Black
only that middle
Panther is
section.
occasionally visually interesting, depending on
Yeah.
where they are.
Yeah. It's just a shame because it's like an epic length movie, and if you look back at like, at the Two Towers or the way that Return of the King ends, and it's just like they nailed the feel of like universe ending fight in a way that Endgame, like I know I'm being harsh on Endgame and I'm being harsh on Anthony and Joe Russo, and it's just like like every time I think of epic movie, I'm always like, oh, it's the time heist movie. I'm not like, oh, it's the movie that wrapped everything up in a nice pretty bow that they are now trying to undo so that they can make more money. You know, which is kind of the shame of it all. But the shame. But yeah, that's I'd be interested if you ever watch Dr. Zhivago on your thoughts, but it's very whatever. It's very long. But yeah, if they have any other questions for us or about our podcast, where can they? I like that you do this. It makes it so much easier for my mental processes that I don't have to do this. Where can they go?
They can go to video at underthewheels.com. Why video at underthewheels.com? Because we have a YouTube channel, and that's the email for the YouTube channel and everything now. You can also find the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. Make sure to leave a rating and review. Underthewheels.com is your go-to for like reviews and the odd analytical article or polemic opinion piece. Like us on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We are on Twitter, but Twitter is probably not good for your health, so keep that in mind. Yeah, I think I think I covered everything.
I think you did. That's Under the Wheels today. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Gabe.
And you've just been Under the Wheels. That felt weird. That ending felt weird, but
That was bad.
yeah, that was bad. I'm keeping it.
Okay.
Time check. We have about 7.5 minutes left.
Oh shit! I took up the whole podcast.
That's I'm fine with that. I didn't really have much to add, so I mean, I do have a little bit we can talk about, but yeah.
Finished.